Okay, Trenton, how you doing? You're looking really good here. I've got the PDF right up here, so we'll take a look at that. Let me see if you had any written observations. No, there's no written descriptions here, so we'll just jump right over to the work. Okay, I think it's a really good start. It's really super cute, definitely. I think it was a great idea to use the little chipmunk or little squirrel to making the guacamole. It's just really, I think it's super clever. I love it. Okay, so as far as the narrative and the illustrative quality goes, there's a few things I think that can really help the narrative itself as well as help the viewer understand. And then also I have got some comments regarding the illustrative technique. Let's start with the illustrative technique. So these are great. This is wonderful right here with the reduced transparency so we can kind of see that he's looking side to side. Maybe a question mark right up here, a small question mark. That's a neat technique, though. I think that's really cool. Okay, so the technique is good. It's good, solid foundation, but I think we're a little underdeveloped. For example, in some areas, the little creature, the little chipmunk has a nose. In other areas, he doesn't. I would give him a complete face. So over here, he's got these reflective eyes, the kind of anime eyes, a little bit. Um, but here he has nothing, and then here he's got no reflection. So here he's got reflections, here he has no pupils, and here he has pupils but no reflection. So we'll need to be really consistent there. Think about shadow and highlight areas on the creature as well as the objects, the bowl, etc. You've indicated depth here a little bit by creating the far side of the bowl being a little darker. That was smart. That's good technique. But I think in other areas, first of all, the face. We got to get a common face throughout the whole thing. That's what's going to help the viewer identify with the main character. And therefore, by default, subsequently identifying with the issue, the problem, the conflict, as it were. So definitely got to get a common face here that we can use on consistency and presentation throughout every frame that you show the creature. This one, he looks different. Here he looks like a squirrel. Here he looks a little different. I'm not real sure that doesn't seem real consistent with the other presentation of that little squirrel or gerbil or um, chipmunk. So let's really try to define the chipmunk. Now, another thing that can be said about the illustrations is that you're somewhat lacking in contrast, and you know by now that the test for me is the zoom test, or the reverse of that, which is zooming out. So if we zoom out, I do this all the time to check contrast. So if we zoom out, we can see there's some areas that are no longer visible. And this is a great test for contrast. And we can see right here, the hammer is not really visible. Neither is it that we see it in his hand. So really think about contrast there, making that more visible. Same thing here. Okay, and the same thing in these, we can't really see what's going on. So really think about contrast in the presentation. I would say that there's a lot going on here. Well, let me finish along. We'll talk about the general layout in a second, but we need to make some connections here, okay? So we need to make a connection, the fact that squirrel or gerbil, that's his toolbox. So we need to show him somehow interacting with the toolbox. I'm not real sure why the exclamation point is on the toolbox, nor these kind of little fragments here. If that's the solution, then it shouldn't be indicated like this with this kind of warning. But anyway, show the squirrel or the gerbil approaching or somehow interacting with the toolbox. That way the transition from, hey, what am I supposed to use, to I have a hammer in hand makes sense. Okay, so then he comes over here. He's about ready to start smashing, and watch the contrast right there. He's ready to start smashing the avocado to make the guacamole, right? I'm not sure what this is right now. It just shows him with a hammer. He's got no eyes, and he's got this little kind of, I'm not sure what that red mark is on his head. So that's really super unclear. So I think at this point, this is unclear and this is unclear. The finished product is okay. I would definitely add a little stack or a bowl of nacho chips next to that. That will further define that this is guacamole and that it is ready to eat. And then at the final frame, you can actually show him. Now, this is, again, where I'm talking about contrast. I would put a little chip in his hand. And you might even have that. You do. You do. You got a little chip in his hand, a little nacho chip, but as you can see, we can't see it. And again, that points to a lack in contrast. Okay, finally, that I had a slight interruption. I believe I left off talking about the contrast of the chip. Um, okay, so this isn't specifically clear, and neither is this. So I think this frame, and this frame definitely need to be adjusted, make it more clear as to what's going on. This frame, we got to get some interaction with the gerbil in there, and then the contrast on the other frames. Now, and again, I would add a stack of chips or a bowl of chips next to that bowl there so that this makes sense. Now, as far as a general construction of the page, I think it's pretty cluttered. I think there's a lot going on here. Um, Not that it's too much for illustrative sake, but it's in terms of the narrative. I think there's a lot here that's impeding the viewer from a good, nice flow through the narrative. And the reason I say that is because there's too much in the background to grab the viewer's attention while they're trying to go through the narrative. So we have some hierarchy issues, and I think those could be rectified by simplifying the actual story. One thing I would recommend here is, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think we could probably even remove the avocados. The tree in the background, the avocado tree in the background should be fine, but or you can remove that tree altogether and just use these frames. And then I would take the frames out of the avocados because it's just too much to try to grasp of what's going on. So I would just use the frames in the circles, and then I would connect the circles with something that would be a great idea to connect the circles with nacho chips, right? And then watch the flow. Right now you've got some proximity issues. So we see that there's a really great distance between this frame and this frame here. So you want to kind of keep equidistance between the frames so that the viewer doesn't feel like there's a greater lapse of time in the frames that are located further from each other in proximity. Does that make sense? So let's shoot for some consistency in the distance between these frames. And then let's get a nice organic flow through here. So if you want to do like a serpentine, but this is a little bit weird where it goes like this, then it curves back like this, then it comes over here and it comes up and then it comes down like this. So try to think of a more organic serpentine shape to follow. Okay, those are my recommendations. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. But I would definitely consider those in your final submission. I think it'll really make the piece much more accessible to the viewer. And I think that the illustrative techniques will definitely improve depth, dimension, and volume. And then the layout recommendations will improve the page mechanics as well as the viewer's ability to follow the narrative in an expeditious way with no confusion. All right, great. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'll be glad to make any needed clarifications. Thank you very much.